Hello, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so I thought I'd start on time. We've got a number of people. There will be more people joining us. So welcome to this free webinar on happy, healthy conflict, how to communicate in these difficult times. And you might be kind of thinking, well, how can conflict ever be happy and healthy? And certainly from my experience of learning how to deal with conflict, I was one of those people who was very, very fearful of conflict and would avoid it at all costs. And having learned how to deal with it, I've had many examples of where actually I've been in a situation where it's been in conflict, or have to have a difficult conversation, and actually it's helped the relationship. And so I'm going to obviously expand on that and how to do that as we go through the next half an hour. So some people haven't met me before, so I'll just say a little bit about myself. So I am a chartered occupational psychologist, an NLP master practitioner, and I work as a coach and trainer and workplace mediator in all different types of organisations, both in the private and the public sector. And I specialise in communication issues and also about resilience and stress at work. And much of my work now has obviously gone online, in that I'm doing coaching. I normally do coaching face to face. I like that, but I've been doing more and more coaching online and via the telephone, and I'm also discussing with clients about how to run workshops online as well. So I'll be doing more of that. So what we're going to cover is, first of all, look at you and conflict. And then we're going to look at the brain's response to conflict, the importance of rapport in order to have those more difficult conversations, and about managing interactions with other people. And so, first of all, I'd like you to think about, and you might want to kind of type in the chat box, but what kind of situations at work do you regard, or at home, do you regard as conflict, or having a difficult conversation? And so what sorts of situations? And you might think about the current environment we're working in, and times that we're living in. So it might be that you're now working remotely from your colleagues and from your clients. It might be that actually you are going out into work and you're working incredibly hard in very stressful environments, with the added, fear of catching the virus. And think about what's your response. So when I'm coaching and training people, I tend to find that people who find it difficult to deal with conflict have two emotional reactions. They either get very fiery, or they want to run away. And they want to avoid conflict altogether. And I was doing a talk around this to a business group, and one of the people who I know very well, who runs his own business, said, oh, I don't have any conflict in my life, everything's fine. And by the time I'd finished the session, he said, I realise I just avoid conflict. So it doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean that I don't need to have those difficult conversations, but I avoid it, which actually isn't very good. I do need to find a way of doing it. So so bear in mind those difficult conversations and situations as we go through this. So why is it so difficult? Now, there's a whole range of different factors, but I want to kind of focus on the neuroscience. I want to now look at your brain and conflict. So your brain is designed to keep you safe. So it looks out for rewards, and it looks out for risks and threats. And the rewards might be, oh, I got something nice I've organised this weekend, and you think about it and you look forward to it. Or, I enjoyed my work, and so I look forward to it. And that's, the part of the reward response. And the threat and the risks and the threats is that our brain wants to move away from them. It's the fight, flight, or freeze. And we want to move away from anything that it perceives as a threat. And therefore, whatever you consider to be conflict, which might be different from what somebody else perceives as conflict, or having a difficult conversation, you're going to see as a threat. So if you take the situations that people are in at the moment, I've had a few of my coaching clients who said, actually, it's really nice not being in the office because I don't have to deal with the office politics, the people I'm not getting on well with. But actually, you probably still do need to talk to them, but it is likely to be remotely. And as we'll come on to next, is looking at building rapport, is that actually if rapport starts to deteriorate, it becomes even more problematic. And perhaps that we can hide behind the fact that we might be remote and therefore avoid having those conversations. But also is that, what was I going to say, is that if you are, we're all, well, when most of us are kind of locked in our homes, we can go out for our one walk, is that you might be with family, you might be with children. I have a number of friends who's not just their teenage, but often their 20-somethings children have landed back home for the duration, and one of them includes with one of their boyfriends as well. Suddenly all the daughters have come home, including one of their boyfriends, and so actually the difficult conversations and some of those kind of threats that you might be perceiving may be in the home environment. It might be that actually people you don't feel they're pulling their weight, or they're doing things differently from how you want to, whether it's stacking the dishwasher or taking out the bin or whatever else it might be, but that can trigger the threat response. Now, I don't have time in this webinar, and I cover it in other webinars I've done, to talk about the dampening down the brain's threat response. But one of the things is, just being able to take a deep breath and allowing a little bit of time before you up the threat response goes, might give you that space to actually think about how you're going to respond. So one way, though, of dampening down other people's threat response is to have rapport with them. And this is about being able to connect in some sort of way. And I always kind of see, rapport as on a continuum. At one end, where you got rapport with a good friend, where perhaps you haven't seen them for a year, but when you meet up, it's just like you saw them yesterday. And at the other end, where you can't stand somebody. But there's a lot in between. And in the workplace, I talk about having a working level of rapport. You won't be friends with everybody. But that might also include the people in your house. You will have different levels of rapport. I mean, people were kind of joking online about, one is that maternity units and divorce lawyers are going to be busy after this period of time. Building rapport is one way of avoiding one, but not perhaps the other. Anyway, less of that. So I want to introduce a model of rapport, which if I just put the whole model up, and just talk about how this works. And so with this model of rapport, is that even if you haven't got rapport, even if you agree with somebody, or you give some positive feedback, or you thank them, it's likely to come across as patronizing if you don't connect in some sort of way. Whereas if you have that rapport, it's seen as encouraging. And I remember when I was in my first consultancy job, in the first year, I had really good rapport with my manager. We got on incredibly well. I could say anything to him. And then it all went wrong in the second year, not just for me, for lots of people in the organization. And when he tried to give me positive feedback, I just wanted to kind of brush it off. I didn't believe him. Because of everything else that was going on. So once that rapport's gone, then you're kind of on a hiding to nothing. And on the other side of the equation, if you haven't got rapport and you disagree with somebody, is that it's likely to be seen as criticizing them as a person. So you might, in somebody in your household, you might kind of say something quite innocuous about something that you'd like them to do, and they take it really personally if there isn't that connection. Whereas if we have got rapport with somebody, we're much more likely to see something as reasonable. If somebody disagrees, or if they give you negative feedback, we're more likely to think about it and consider it, and even kind of change our views on it. And so having rapport is like the foundation of any working relationship, or any relationship whatsoever, but particularly in a working relationship, where you might need to build it because you're thrown together. And the problem is that when people are working remotely, is you're not having those, water cooler moments, those little chats over a cup of coffee, those little chats when you first, get to work. And lots of people are saying to me that they're having daily or weekly check-ins, Zoom calls, etc., with their colleagues. But, I'm wondering whether they just go straight into the task. Because if you think about it, when you all come together in a meeting room, there'll often be a little bit of, a chat, whether it's about the football or, what you did at the weekend, that sort of thing, as you grab your teas and coffees. And you need to do a bit of that to do some of that rapport building. So I've got an online meeting with a client of mine to talk about some training and bringing it online that I'm going to be doing for them. And so, I'm going to make sure at the beginning that we have a little bit of that catch up. And we kind of just check in, particularly in these difficult times. Check in with each other is really important. So what I'd like you to do is just to kind of, if you've got any questions at this stage about rapport, obviously please do in the chat box, please ask any questions. And while you're doing that, I'll just say a little bit more about it. Is that with rapport, is that with some people you just naturally click and it's there. Other people you need to work at it. Is that another thing with rapport? I wanted to say something here about rapport and with older children. And a number of years ago, I was asked by a PTA for me to run workshops for their sixth formers based on my book about building up their confidence. So I did that, and it was very successful. And then one of the parents said to me, "Melanie, could you do something to help me stop nagging my teenage daughters?" And I said, "Well, actually, yeah, I could do a workshop for the parents based on what I'm talking about today." So that's what I did. And when it came to rapport, it was very interesting. So these were A-level, mostly they were talking about the A-level children studying for their A-levels. And they said it got to the point that all the conversations were about, have you done your studies? What did you do at school today? Have you? And any rapport had disappeared. They weren't doing any of the chit chat. They weren't talking about something else. They weren't thinking about anything, all because of their fears were driving it. And a lot of them, I realized they'd lost that rapport, and then that had led on to very unproductive ways of communicating. And I'm going to come on in a moment to different ways of communicating. So nobody's got any questions, so I will move on to. So let's look at managing interactions with other people. And I want to introduce you to transactional analysis, or TA. It's been around since the 1950s, so some of you may well have come across it before. And it's very useful to help understand the patterns of behavior you fall into, and to give you options in terms of how you communicate and how you respond to other people. We often in families is that we get into very unproductive ways of communicating with others, and is that it becomes like a well-worn route. Your mum says something and you react in a certain way, however old you are, or your children say something, or your partner, and you react in the same way. But also in the workplace, and I was coaching somebody yesterday who actually has a very kind of adult approach to work and to the current situation. She is still working, although some people are working from home, some of them are still working in the office at a distance. And she said 3 of her colleagues, actually it's 2 of her colleagues, are left in the office with her, and all they do is moan. And she said it drives them insane. And they've kind of got into a very disempowered way, and they're good at moaning about their boss, but never actually doing anything about it. And so, whether it's at work or out of work, is we can get into very unproductive patterns of behavior. So the parent, adult, child. So some of you may well have come across this before. So what I'm going to do is talk through the modes and then talk through how they interact. So the parent mode, so whether you are a parent or not, you have an internal parent inside you. So when you were growing up and you saw the adults around you, you will have internalized how they were behaving. And in all likelihood is they would have been in one or two parental modes rather than an adult mode. So either the nurturing parent, so the nurturing parent is a bit of us that if somebody's upset, we want to, we want to support them, that we want to comfort them, we want to be there for them. Is that I'm on a number of WhatsApp groups, but there's one from a lot of my ex-colleagues. They're all retired now. I'm the only one working, but we all socialise together, and we're very close, and we've known each other for many, many decades even. And if somebody posts that they're feeling quite low or whatever, or they're really struggling, got elderly, sick parents, etc., in there, people really being supportive or ringing up or whatever, that's your nurturing parent. The critical controlling parent is the bit of us that gets irritated with other people. So it might be, God, I still haven't, pack the dishwasher in the right way. Or it might be that somebody is, they come on an online meeting and they're really annoying in their behavior. They get interrupting or something. Oh, so somebody has said, struggling with critical parent mode with 2 teenagers who are staying in bed until lunchtime. So yes, a common, and I think, and it's interesting with teenagers as well, is that it's very easy to kind of, get into that normal, that parent-child interaction. I'm going like that because I'll show you about the interactions. I think that one is if you're feeling that, is also to think about trying to step into their shoes. Almost that nurturing parent is about what's going on for them. I think it's an incredibly hard time for young people and for teenagers, is that they're, I think life is tough enough for them at any rate, but suddenly everything's up in the air, and their normal kind of supports, okay, they've got, they can, phone, they've got online, but they can't, they're stuck suddenly in the house 24/7, and actually staying in bed might be a symptom of something, something, they're feeling quite depressed about things. So, it might be about stepping into their shows, bringing some of that nurturing parent, and then I'll come back to and talk about the adult in a moment. So let me go to the child mode. So the child mode is that different aspects of the child. There's a positive aspect, that our fun child, where our sense of humour comes from. It's carefree, it's happy, it's creative, it gives us energy, which is really, really important. And I think that, it's, most of us is, having fun is about going out, meeting up with friends. We're not, having this. And I think, look at how can you bring that fun into your life. So I'm self-isolating. I have been for most of March because my health, nothing to do with the virus, and alone. And I've got loads of friends and things, and I'm having a weekly tea online with my friend who actually lives just across the road. I can see her working right now. But we have a weekly catch up, which is lovely. And I suggested to my family, we're all big Yahtzee fans, and I suggested over the Easter weekend that we will be in 3 different locations that we can play Yahtzee. And so they've all kind of responded positively because we all enjoy that, and it's a good way of kind of coming together. So I think, that fun child right at this moment is really important, and it could be a good bonding way for families to bond together as well. And kind of that light relief, or it might be watching, something fun on the TV, etc. It's why, my Facebook, whatever they call it, feed is just constant cartoons and funny videos, because we need it as life relief. because it's so worrying. You know, the times are so frightening in many ways. So anyway, that's the fun child, very important. The adapted child is a bit of us that goes along with social norms. Won't go into that, we haven't got time too much. But we also have a fearful, anxious type child. So your fearful child might have a lot of what ifs. The people around you might have a lot of ifs. If you've got teenagers, you know, it's about really listening to them. Even if it might seem irrational, it's important to listen to them. And it's important to listen to your own. And I said more about this in the video a couple of weeks ago. It will be, I can send you a link to that. But you might have the sulky child, the rebellious child, is that, you know, if you have that, it might respond and play out either in the workplace, the working environment, or in your home environment. So both the parent and child are emotionally driven, and they, whereas the adult is about, yes, I have emotions, but being able to learn to manage my emotions. So I can take a deep breath and be calm and rational. It's about really listening, asking questions. So whether that, you know, you've got a colleague that you're finding it's difficult to communicate with, or it's a teenager or a partner or whoever it is, or, you know, I'm supporting my mum who's 85 at a distance, and which is very challenging, but because of my health, I'm not allowed to go down there. She's in South London. So how you ask questions, how you really seek to understand and listen goes a huge way in terms of building rapport and helping people to kind of come down from wherever they are in terms of parent or child, to be more adult themselves. It's also about respecting other people's rights as well as your own. It's not about playing games, it's aiming for win-win. And ultimately, it's about taking responsibility for actions, decisions, and mistakes. So if you've got any questions, feel free to write this in the chat box. What I want to do is just come on to about the interactions that we have. So there's you, and then there's other people, however that might be, that you find it's kind of quite challenging to deal with, is to think about the interactions. Most of the time, what you want is to have adult to adult communication with, and what you'll find is when there's good rapport and there's good adult to adult, then naturally fun child arrives, and just comes up. So I was talking to, I'm a Buddhist and I'm part of the leadership team in Oxfordshire, and I was talking to one of my co-leaders, and we were talking about some of the challenges that we're both facing at the moment, and then we had we always end up laughing with each other. And so, you know, we, in that conversation, we would have had lots of adult to adult. We had some nurturing parent. This time she was nurturing me because I was feeling overwhelmed. Often it's me nurturing her, and then we had a good laugh. So it's kind of going from one to one, but avoiding the ones to that are going to be unproductive. So somebody has said, any tips to encourage a young adult to move into the adult space and leave the stroppy child behind? I think there's a number of things there. Is that, first of all, is to look at how you're reacting, because it's very easy to want that person to change. Stop being a stroppy child, you know, and think about, well, how are you responding to them? So is it, you know, and even kind of, as I said before, step into their shoes and think, what is this stroppiness about? You know, is it because they're feeling very fearful? Is it because actually they want to rebel because they're feeling so constrained? You know, what's going on for them? You know, if it's possible, think about the level of rapport. You know, have you got into such unproductive relationships that actually you need to build some of that rapport up? So that they will start to kind of talk to you and start to open up. But the really important thing is to remain in adult mode, not get hooked by their stroppy child. And so Eric Byrne, who created this model, he talks about games that people play. And people unconsciously, sometimes consciously, but unconsciously they play games. So it's about actually not being triggered, not playing that game, because they will be used to you then responding in a certain way. And it may be, and we haven't got time to kind of go into, but it might be about actually how you take a step back. The person who's asked this question is, feel free to, I do a free coaching audit. If you want to take that free coaching audit and have a more deeper discussion about this, then feel free to do that as well. There'll be some some information about that at the end. So just to kind of summarize, is that think about managing your brain's threat response. You know, it's challenging times. You know, people, you might be worried about your health, your family's health, worried about your work. You might have lost work, or, you know, or lost money. You know, if you're self-employed, you're not getting so much money coming in. There's lots of different things that is going to help trigger the threat response. And then you throw into it, whether it's stroppy children or partners or colleagues or whoever else it is. So actually managing yourself is really important. Look to think about how can you build rapport with the people around you, and how can you kind of reach out and to build into your life some of those activities that are going to help build rapport. Aim for the adult to adult, with nurturing parent as appropriate without rescuing people, and the fun child to lighten the load, which is really important. And also builds rapport, and avoiding that controlling critical parent and any negative aspects of the child. Because I think particularly if you've got teenage children around, is sometimes you can end up so frustrated you want to rebel as well, which is understandable. So it can pull out different things in yourself. So feel free to ask any questions as we kind of draw near to the end here. I just wanted to say, in terms of helping you to keep going, there's a number of things. If you're not already registered with my website, do that. It's inspiretransformation.co.uk. Then you'll get Melanie's Monday motivational messages. I'm also doing, at the moment, I'm doing roughly 2 or 3 little short 4 or 5 minute videos throughout the week, just kind of to help people keep people going. I have my monthly coaching newsletter. I also got other free webinars, and I've got another one on Tuesday, the 21st of April, which is going to be about being and doing. So it's linked to my Being and Doing course, which starts on the 27th of April. And the whole idea with this is that, how do you need to be in order to do what you need to do? And I've got a 50% reduction in the price of it. And so it's gone down from £99 including VAT to £49 including VAT. And I also offer free coaching audits for individuals, managers, etc., where you complete a questionnaire, return it to me, and then we have a 30-minute telephone conversation based on it. So feel free to do that. Anyone got any final questions that you'd like to ask? And if not, I make it, I think, past. I like to try and stick to time. So no final questions by the look of things. So thank you so much for joining. I hope it was useful. If you want to ask privately any questions as well, then feel free to ask. So thank you very much, and goodbye.